Have you seen my face recently? Well, I wanted you to know that I am a tutor on the SuperProf website. So I currently offer individualized structured literacy tutoring for 60 minutes at a time, one on one assessments every 6 weeks, and this is for one student at a time. So, why do I care about tutoring? That's because I want you to know that in 2026, we are currently witnessing an illiteracy crisis in the USA. Now, this is not manufactured, this has actually been going on for a pretty long time. We've actually known that 54% of American adults read below the equivalent of a sixth grade level. So, this means that nearly one in five adults that you might know actually are considered a functionally illiterate person. So, how did I find out about this? Well, back in 2021, I found out the hard way that my daughter was not being taught to read the same way I was in her public school setting. So this is actually an infographic from Dyslexia Victoria Support, which is in Australia, Victoria, Australia. So it's from a mom group that was on Facebook. And so they made a lot of these infographics to help people understand that there are a lot of things being sold to parents that do not have evidence to support them. So there's a lot of kids that, love to being read to, but we need to understand that just reading a book to a child does not teach them how to read. So, what do kids actually need? Well, human brains are not wired to read. Our human brains are wired for learning languages. Reading is a human made invention. It's a neurobiological skill that has to be taught to somebody for them to learn how to read. And so, when we say structured literacy or you hear science of reading, what it means is they need to be taught explicitly phonology, phonics, syllables, grammar, syntax, morphology, that all comes together to include comprehension, which is essentially the mastery of literacy. So, in 2021 and 2022, what we did get was my daughter was getting balanced literacy instruction. That means she was sent home leveled readers, that she would sit at the table and cry instead of being able to read them. It didn't work. When we went to the school and said, hey, your instruction you're currently giving my daughter is not teaching her to read, the school literally told us, well, maybe it's your daughter's issue. You need to take her to a brain training doctor. We actually refused because that is not backed by research. So, what you need to know is that, first of all, you need to go to your pediatrician, which we did, who told us, hey, there's nothing wrong with her eyes. And you need to get your child's eyes checked. You can even go to an optometrist to check that as well. My daughter does need glasses, but it's not for reading. And you also need to understand the difference between an actual vetted doctor and a scam. So if you hear about cranial manipulation, that's not evidence-based. If you hear about auditory or brain retraining, that's not evidence-based. If you are advertised to buy some color overlays, that doesn't help. There is something called behavioral optometry. Yeah, that doesn't work. And then also flashing lights. None of these actually are evidence-based. When it comes to a child that might be dyslexic, which is about phonological processing, or just any student that's not taught to read, students need to be taught the alphabetic code in order to learn how to read. So I learned more by listening to the Soul to Story podcast. And this is because one of the very first episodes, there was a mom from my state with a son that was experiencing similar issues that I was. And she was a teacher herself who was taught this balanced literacy instruction. So it's several moms and teachers coming forward to admit that, hey, we were sold a story. We went to college, we paid our tuition, and we were taught the wrong ways. So now it's parents and tutors like me that are taking the training upon themselves. Now, one training I want to point out is it's usually free. That's how I got it in October. That was Dyslexia Awareness Month. But you can pay for it if you'd like, but this is understanding dyslexia. Now, this doesn't make me a dyslexia specialist. It just helps me better understand what dyslexia is. I also highly recommend dyslexia training by Microsoft Learn. It's in partnership with Made by Dyslexia, which is a UK-based organization to help advertise and educate people that dyslexia is genetic. It is a neurotype, so it's how your brain is wired. It's neurobiological, and it's about phonological processing. So you can learn to read, and it's not about vision. If you have a vision issue when it comes to reading or looking at letters, that is addressed by your pediatrician or an ophthalmologist. So also I want to highlight Reading Universe. It's a offshoot of Reading Rockets, which for years has supported literacy in evidence-based instruction. So this is their new free para reading course, and it's basically phonological awareness, which is the main help for understanding and teaching kids about phonological processing. Then also my favorite training by far, and it's free. They've admitted they are going to keep it free for their entirety of creating it, is Cox Campus. So they have a full structured literacy program, and it's from pre-K all the way to 5th grade. And it doesn't just talk about reading, it's also about writing and how to teach it and how to explain and teach comprehension. Now, I want you to understand, let's say all this information is kind of overload, right? The very basics is these infographics from Nessie Learning. So when you learn how to read, you're saying each sound and you're blending them together. So you go from left to right all through the word cat, and then you blend them cat to make the word cat. Now, spelling is also called encoding, and it's just the opposite. You say the word, you break it into chunks. That's called segmenting. So when you have cat or cat, then you can break it down into cat, which are the letters C-A-T. This is exactly how I taught my daughter and son to read in our independent homeschool setting. And recently we've transitioned them back to public school, where all of the teachers, thankfully, because of our structured literacy laws, have taken Cox Campus training, and some of the specialist ELA teachers have taken what we call a specialist of letters training. So, what do parents need to know in 2026? I want you to know that even if you hired me as a tutor tomorrow, I can't teach your child to read within an hour, a day, a week, or even a year. Reading honestly starts in the language department at birth, but the main instruction for explicit instruction of structured literacy starts in kindergarten or sometimes pre-K. And it doesn't stop until 6th grade. And even then, I would argue it doesn't stop for life, because we're always reading, we're always learning and growing. But essentially, from kindergarten to 6th grade, this is where your brain develops all of these neural connections to develop orthographic mapping so that you can read anything that you want. So in kindergarten level, that's where we focus on the beginning of letter sounds, making that connection from print. And then 1st grade, you want to unglue from that print, so then you can start manipulating those phonemes and writing more, and handwriting comes in here. And then from 1st grade to 3rd grade, that's why cursive is big right now, because cursive is one of the biggest indicators of connecting your brain and learning and handwriting. And also it helps sometimes if you have an issue of reversals, which are developmentally appropriate until the age of 9. But if you have a child that's in between the ages of 7 and 9 and they're still doing reversals, you start need to investigating, hey, is this a vision issue? Is this a phonological issue? Or is something else going on? But essentially, all of this is going on in between these years. So parents need to know this is not a quick fix. It's a long process. So if you are interested in learning more from me, I do have a website where you can go. I have blog posts. I do have self-published books that you can purchase. And then also you can like and subscribe to support this YouTube channel. But thank you so much for watching.